And hello, how are you doing? I am glad to see everybody here. I know some more people are going to show up as we hang out. This was really nice to be able to come in and do this after taking last week off due to the July 3rd day off that we received here at the museum as part of the July 4th weekend. I hope everybody had a safe and pleasant, accident-free weekend. Hope everybody has all 10 fingers and toes and no bad accidents happened while you're entertaining yourselves with the fireworks. We have, if you've followed our page, you would have seen that the thing that I want to talk about today is honorary marshals. Before we get into that, though, I do want to mention, again, just as a reminder, there's a number of different ways that you can help the museum. You can help our programs here. Same stuff you've heard me say before, and I'll continue to say it. If you can if you're interested in financially helping the museum out, the least you can do is stop by our webpage and buy a brick. You can go to our GoFundMe and drop some money there. You can also, we'll take checks. So if you want to go ahead and do another way of giving its donation, we are looking forward to that. We've got some really fun announcements along the lines of fundraising that are going to be coming out over the next week or so. So we're really excited about that. See Sharon Theobald from West Tennessee. We're going to see some other folks popping in here in a second, I'm sure. Glad to have you, Sharon. We are just continuing to move forward with the project. I know every once in a while we get questions about what it is that we're doing and how can we still have the museum when we're not doing anything. And well, it's just like we're doing things like this, continuing to talk to the people in the public. We have a number of programs. We took our spring break camp offline and made a lot of materials available to the people who are forced to stay at home. If you can go to our YouTube channel and see a lot of those videos that our educator Leslie created. Later this summer, we're going to be doing a camp, a short summer camp, that those activities we're going to be streaming live. We're probably going to be streaming those over Facebook and then later throwing those videos on YouTube. So we're really excited about all the different projects and programs that we have going on, even though we can't really share the building. And some of you, in case you haven't seen, we have been publicly announcing lately that the building is not open. The reason why that we've been feeling like we have to say that is we still regularly get people who come by the building hoping that we're open, expecting that we're open. Some people have legitimately expected to have a full museum here. If you are a regular viewer of the live stream, you know that's not the case. You've seen the inside of the shell where the exhibits will be at. For more information on the exhibits, you can also go to our webpage. As with almost any question about what's going on, you can go to the webpage, you can find out what's going on. You can take a look at our exhibit design, you can take a look at what our plans are, and really honestly our plans have not changed. We raised the money to build the building is here. We're raising the money to take care of our museum experience, and we're well on our way towards that. We just need to complete that so we can call up everyone and have them start doing all the work that needs to be done so we can better tell the story of Marshal Service. So with that said, I'm just running through a checklist in my head. I know that we mentioned the Build a Brick, we mentioned the GoFundMe. I'm going to go ahead and drop into what I was wanting to talk about today, which is the history of the honorary marshals. And while we've talked a lot about marshals themselves, like we have currently 94 presidentially appointed U.S. marshals, one in each judicial district across the United States. Each of those marshals is appointed by the president, approved by Congress, and then they have a number of deputies who work for them. These deputies are all professional law enforcement officers. They are not what they once were, for example, 150 years ago when people were riding into what's now Oklahoma, where anybody who wanted to and had a gun and a horse could become a deputy and ride off. The deputies today are all very well trained. They're some of the most highly trained federal law enforcement officers you're going to come across. It's amazing the course of study that they go to. go through at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. These men and women who do this job, and they are there by merit. They are there very much as a result of who they are and the training they receive. When you start to look at honoraries, though, there's a whole different history of that. And nobody's really sure when the honorary position really started up for honorary deputies anyway. But that typically, for a long time, was local districts, local U.S. Marshals just nominating or just naming somebody, oh, you're an honorary deputy for the Western District of wherever, or you're an honorary deputy for the Central District of wherever, because of different activities or actions that person may have taken that was beneficial to that particular area. And so with the actions that were being taken, the honorary deputies, unfortunately, one of the things that would happen is some people would think that the honorary deputy is much more legitimate than it actually is. Occasionally, some people who shouldn't have been named deputies were named honorary deputies, were brought in. And so the organization started to realize that some of those honorary deputations really were troublesome and problematic. And so my understanding now, based on conversations with numerous people at the Marshal Service, is that in order to name someone an honorary deputy marshal, you pretty much have to have that person kind of vetted by headquarters, because they're much more aware of negative effects of the wrong person being named to those. That, and if somebody is named as an honorary deputy U.S. Marshal, then the validity of that is not as powerful as what the validity of that. They have no enforcement power. They can't carry a gun. They don't get a badge with it. It's essentially, here's a certificate that says you've been named this. This came up as an issue with us about a year and a half ago or so. A certain individual passed away. He'd been named an honorary deputy, and a local group of folks had asked us, well, aren't you going to recognize this person when he passed away? He was a deputy. And we started to go back through, and we found out, well, no, he was an honorary deputy, and headquarters didn't even have a record of that ever taking place. And so we have to be very careful ourselves sometimes in the stories that we tell and how we tell some of these stories. So we want to make sure that we get the story correct, but we also want to make sure that we don't come out and say something that we haven't vetted the story ourselves. You can get into some trouble just automatically accepting the story that someone is told. As a historian, I get to watch back through and see different stories that have gone through people's families generation after generation, and I find out that there are stories that my great-great-great-uncle was a deputy marshal someplace, and then you find out, no, they weren't the deputy marshal, they worked for the school, or they were a farmer, or they, in some cases, were the bad guy. And so the story gets written and rewritten in histories, and so we want to make sure that we get a chance to set those records straight. For a number of the things that we have going on, you'll have to excuse me, I'm trying to see if I've got my feed, if it's working correctly. There we go. All right. Yeah, because I'm showing a weird problem with my feed on this side. It looks like it's going across okay, though. If anybody has any problems with the feed, please go ahead and let me know. But for the honorary U.S. Marshals, that ends up coming up to talking about at the agency level, people who are recognized for very specific acts or long-term acts that are beneficial to the Marshal Service. And again, this comes with no law enforcement powers. This comes with no ability to carry firearms. This is something that is honorary as much as an honorary degree or an honorary title of any other kind is honorary. It's basically, it's a thank you, serious thank you from the Marshal Service, because so many of the actions that a lot of people take cannot be recognized by finances or other sort of rewards. And so I'm going to start off with the first of these. There are 9 U.S. Marshals, well, 9 honorary U.S. Marshals that have been named. And there's, I'm sure, many hundreds of honorary deputy U.S. Marshals. But of the 9 honorary U.S. Marshals, the first one I'm going to name is Ronald Reagan. He obviously should not be. You should not have any problems with the familiarity of Ronald Reagan's name. United States President, elected in 1980, re-elected in 1984. He served for 8 years, and during that time, saw the budget go into. Thanks for the note on the feed coming through clear. Served during that time on an expansion of government roles and an expansion of the budget into law enforcement. Especially with a lot of the attention and energy that he allowed towards the Marshal Service. It was during that time, during the 80s, the Marshal Service had really started to kind of gain some energy during the 70s, some energy that it had lost through much of the 20th century. They started to become known as a very effective tool in the civil rights era, 1950s, 60s, especially. 70s, they started to really start to gain their the street cred again for being manhunters and going after fugitives. And that really started to crystallize in the 80s. You start to see not only the budget improve, the missions improve, you start to see a lot more positive energy heading towards the Marshal Service. And part of this was for example, the Joseph Mengele investigation. Joseph Mengele was a war criminal from World War II. He'd escaped from continental Europe, and a lot of people they thought he was still alive. They didn't know where he was, and nobody was able to find him until they brought the Marshal Service in to help aid that search. And through the work that the Marshal Service did, they ended up determining that Joseph Mengele had lived through World War II. He had lived in South America, and then they ended up finding that he'd actually died swimming with a stroke, died of a stroke while swimming. There was a lot of different activities going on during the 80s. In the revamping of the system, it was during the 80s that the Marshals had Operation Flagship, which was the Washington, D.C. raid where they grabbed a whole bunch of warrant fugitives in the D.C. area through the offering of fake free Redskins tickets. And so if you ever want to see a really good show, ESPN 30 for 30 short called Strike, it was the Strike Team, the Strike Force. It was really excellent show with original footage of the events as they took place. Lots of great stuff. But there was a real vitalization during the 80s. And as part of that, the Marshal Service thanked Ronald Reagan for a lot of that work. That tight relationship also resulted in this. This is one of my favorite pieces in our collection. This is a Colt single action Army revolver. This Colt was worked on by the Colt Custom Shop, full coverage on the engraving and the nickel plate. Beautiful work, ivory grips, and on the back it's kind of faded out now because not everybody treated objects like this the same way the museum treats objects like this. A lot of people had their hands on the grips, and so they've kind of tarnished out. But on the back, it has from Ronald Reagan to Stanley Morris. Stanley Morris was the director of the Marshal Service at the time. Let me see if I can get that up into the camera. No, I don't think that's going to work. It's really hard to grab that just simply because of how tarnished that particular spot is. But Stanley Morris, being the director of the Marshal Service at the time, he was not allowed to accept that because he was a federal employee. So that came into the collection for the Marshal Service, and by extension, it's on loan to us here at the Marshals Museum. And again, it's a reminder, we are not the Marshal Service. We have the awesome ability and responsibility to tell their story. But I'm not a Marshal Service employee. The museum here is not funded by the United States Marshals Service. We're just trying to help tell their story the best way possible. The second person, probably one of the most famous fake marshals ever, is James Arness. James Arnaz, a lot of you might remember him as Matt Dillon if you ever saw the TV show Gunsmoke, one of the longest running television series, dramatic television series ever on television, 1955 to 1975. I remember watching it in syndication, sitting on my dad's lap. Once a week we'd sit and we would watch Gunsmoke, and I remember watching Matt Dillon keep order in Dodge City. The James Arnaz during that time frame was greatly trying to help out the Marshal Service. If they asked him for help, he would show up and he would give lectures and talks. He did voiceovers for videos from the Marshal Service. He helped them with their training. He did tours through headquarters. He was very popular within the service. He also had an opportunity to help make the country more publicly aware of the Marshal. The reason why I say he's the most famous fake Marshal is simply because Dodge City itself never had a Marshal. It was not home to a judicial district. I am sure that there were deputies who operated in and around Dodge City and Ford County at different points. But if, for example, if you ever see a Marshal's badge that somebody tries to sell you as Deputy U.S. Marshal or U.S. Marshal, Ford County, Kansas, or Dodge, Kansas, it's a fake badge. Those badges were never made because the position never existed. The first Marshal's office in Dodge City was a kind of a fake honorary Marshal's office that was set up more as a tourist location than anything else. But James Arnaz was named an honorary U.S. Marshal also in 1987. A couple of other folks' names that people should know. Bob Dole, John Warner, those are both in 1988. More political figures than anything else. They ended up being named just for the same reason, like Ronald Reagan. If you have conversations back and forth with these people all the time and they do a really good job for you or they really help out, how can you thank them? Especially if their government and your government, how can you get in and give them something to let them know that they are helping you out a lot to get your job done? And so that was one of those things that happened. 1991, among the many accolades this person received, Bob Hope. Bob Hope, amazing entertainer, actor, comedian, singer. Well, I'm not a great singer, but he was a singer. Bob Hope, amazing person. He ended up for a lot of work that he had done that had helped support the Marshal Service during that time frame. He ends up being rewarded. One odd one that you end up coming across is a gentleman by the name of Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola was a Sony Entertainment executive. Some of you might also remember him from some of the people he had buried during his life, some of the shows he was involved with, and I believe it was because of his entertainment work and his entertainment leadership and making sure that certain things happened. The Marshal Service ended up sending him making him an honorary U.S. Marshal. One I really love talking about, the next one, this would be number 7. This one, he's one of my favorites just because of the number of the things that he's done, but also because I've personally met him. He used to sit on the board of the United States Marshals Museum. This guy's name is Jim Riley. Jim Riley was a geologist by training. He went in the Navy for a little bit. He was working for a number of different projects, but he always liked space and he always wanted to be an astronaut. And finally, during this period of the space shuttle program, he applied for and became an astronaut, and then ended up going up on 3 different missions. Among those missions, they were mainly to the space station and helping to get some repair and additional work done, because really that's what the space station mission over its life ended up becoming, was the construction of the ISS. So Jim goes up on that a couple of times, but during the same time, one of the things a lot of astronauts have to do is they go out and they talk to public, they talk to the crowds. And Jim Riley was terrified of public speaking. So he started working with a person who was a trainer who would teach him to get better at speaking. And this person was also working with a man who was a senior executive within the Marshal Service, and made that connection and figured, you know what, Jim, you can get a whole lot of practice done by going out, and I think you should talk to the Marshal Service, and I think you would do a really good job talking to them. They could learn lessons from you, but you would also get a lot more practice with a really receptive audience. And so Jim Riley started doing that. He was introduced to a gentleman at the Marshal Service, Duke Smith. He was the associate director at the time. And this is out of an article written by Dave Turk. You might remember Dave. He was on a few weeks ago talking about Billy the Kid. Dave Turk is the historian for the Marshal Service, and this is an article that he wrote back in 2001 for the Marshals Monitor, their internal newsletter at the time. And from the presentation, from one of his quotes about this presentation that he would give, is how teamwork in space is the key element to success. Quote, you get to know the crew better than your family in many ways. In different situations, you learn how they will act and react, and you feed off of each other. It's a blast. And I think with the more that I have had a chance to learn and be around the Marshals throughout the Marshal Service, it's really just a lot of really neat similarities between those two organizations and how close the teamwork gets. Everybody I've talked to who is a deputy or POD, plain old deputy as they call themselves sometimes, is they all know the other people on their crew sometimes better than their own families, just because of all the time that they spend together going out and doing the job. So there were some real amazing things. And with all of the speaking engagements he was doing and with how popular he was in the relationship he started to get, the Marshal Service realized, you know what, we really ought to thank him. And why don't we? And they ended up, they sent a badge. They said, we're going to send a badge with you up into space. And he was like, oh, that'd be cool. I'd love to do that. And so he does that. What he didn't know is they were going to make him an honorary U.S. Marshal, and it was going to be his badge. And for those of you who have watched this regularly, watch the stream, this is that badge. You've seen this one before. This is the badge that he carried up to space. This is on STS 104, and it's in a regular credentials case. And so here's his credentials. It's to certify that Honorary United States Marshal James F. Riley is recognized for his support of the United States Marshals Service. And then, as with all the other credentials, even came with the picture and everything else, and his badge number is US number 7. And it was signed by Louis McKinney, who was the acting director at the time. So that was in 2001 that he received that. Later that year, there was a gentleman, John Erickson. Not a whole lot's known about John Erickson, really. This sounded like it was something that was done because of the work by a friend of his. The ninth and the last honorary U.S. Marshal that was named was John Walsh. John Walsh is a name that should not be a stranger to anybody watching this. John Walsh came to the public eye as a result of the kidnapping and killing of his son Adam. Adam Walsh was kidnapped July 27th, 1981. So we're coming up on 40 years since that occurred. As a result of what happened with his son, John Walsh realized that there wasn't anybody really going out looking for these kids, and there wasn't really a central resource. And so as a result, John Walsh created America's Most Wanted, one of the longest running reality TV shows that we've had in our country. As a result of America's Most Wanted, more than 1,200 fugitives have been brought to justice, and more than 50 missing children have been found. Over the time of that show, John Walsh became very familiar with the Marshal Service, and they realized that they were all working together. And the Marshal Service definitely helps with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. But the current director of that is a former director of the Marshal Service. And so it's kind of a natural that someone like John Walsh, I know that John's done some voiceover work for the Marshal Service. He's done some training videos, and he's done some other things very much in tangent with the Marshal Service. So he's been really popular as part of that. I would be interested in hearing any suggestions anybody who's watching right now might have to, like, as to who would be who they think would be good honorary U.S. Marshals. I saw somebody mentioned earlier, did we know a current district marshal was in, I'm guessing that's Western District of Tennessee. Current district marshal was in the movie about U.S. Marshals with Tommy Lee Jones. I didn't know that any currently serving district deputies or U.S. Marshals were in the film, but there's a lot of that. I've heard some people mention Tommy Lee Jones. They're surprised that he was never given an honorary marshal. There's some other folks who have worked to help them in the public eye. I know that about 1990, Eastern District, I'm sorry. About 1990, one of the 4 girls from New Orleans, when they integrated the schools down there during the Civil Rights era, about 1990, one of the 4 girls was named as an honorary deputy, I believe in the Southern District of Louisiana. But she was named a deputy marshal. I know at least one book says that she was an honorary U.S. Marshal, but she was only named as an honorary deputy. But it's one of those things that if somebody is or does something that is of the level that the United States Marshal Service wants to give them this, again, it's ceremonial. There's not a big deal there, and there's not a lot that comes across. They don't, like, for that and $1, they can go get a coffee. But you get simulated credentials. They are for extraordinary contributions to law enforcement and the Marshal Service in particular. They will be nominated by the Director of the United States Marshal Service or similar, and they will be they'll get the discretion of the Director of the Marshal Service has the discretion of making that tribute. So let's see. Otherwise, I'm sure that a lot of us could think of some different people in the history of the Marshal Service who have been not deputies, not marshals, who have done some amazing things. And I think there's different ways that they can be rewarded. I know having a chance to be involved in this project, I've seen really some amazing people who have helped make this museum come to be. And as we move into the future, we're getting closer and closer on that. Again, I was going to show you while I was talking, I didn't think about it when I was talking about Jim Riley. I had all this stuff all set out. Not just the badge, here's some other stuff that you guys haven't seen yet. These, besides taking the badge to space, these are patches that Jim Riley wore on his uniform when he was on the International Space Station. Because you can see there's the Velcro on the back side. And so he had these patches that he was able to carry when he was up on the ISS. Here is a signed photograph. And that's, let's see here. You got Jim Riley is farthest over to your left. You have, let's see here. You have, I'm trying to run through the names, Steve Swanson to, I'm going from left to right. Riley, then Steve Swanson. Then you have the pilot, let's see, where is he? The Commander Frederick Rick Sturkow. He is a colonel in the Marine Corps. You have Lee Archambault, colonel in the Air Force, was the pilot. You have Patrick Forrester, retired United States Army colonel. You have, he was a mission specialist, and then you also have Danny Olivas, his PhD. He's, hey, from my alma mater, UTEP, Texas El Paso. I'd forgotten that we had a UTEP student who went to space. That's awesome. Go Miners. Here is a picture of Jim Riley with Louis McKinney, who's the acting director at the time. Here we go with, that's Jim is the tall one in the suit, and they're right next to Louis, and I'm not 100% sure who the other folks there are. And then here's Jim Riley at the podium. Jim's a really nice guy. He's a geologist by trade, worked in the oil industry for a number of years, and is currently, I believe he's still head of the United States Geological Survey. So lots of neat stuff there about the kind of people who have been in. So again, Reagan in 85, James Arnez 87, Bob Dole in 88, John Warner in 88, Bob Hope in 91, Tommy Mottola in 97, Jim Riley and Jed Erickson in 2001, and then John Walsh. I don't have a year for when he was actually named Honorary U.S. Marshal. But we've got those 9. It's been a few years since we've had one, and the 9 that are there happened across a period of maybe 20 years. So it's not something that happens regularly, and it's something that they take very seriously. If there's nothing else, though, if anybody has a question about the museum, about honorary marshals, I know this is kind of a low-key discussion today, but after the last few talks and getting some folks from around the country involved, I thought we'd give back one word at least to the collections. If you or anybody you know think that you have something you want us to do at one of these Facebook Lives on, by all means, let us know, and we would be more than happy to take a look at that subject. I've got some other subjects that we are looking at for the future, but as we go, we're going to continue to try to get some good information out and help you and others better understand the Marshal Service. Other than that, thank you very much for showing up. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for taking part in the discussions for what they were. I hope to see more of you in the future. Let me make sure that I've got my screen doing what it needs to do. And I think beyond that, thank you very much for giving us the time out of your day to watch our Facebook Live. And take care, and believe me, once the museum's open to the public, we'll let you know. All right, bye-bye.